My childhood was pretty lonely. I was an only child, and my parents were always busy with work. So like a lot of kids, I invented a friend. His name was Pip. Pip was everything I wasn't. He was brave, outgoing, and never afraid of the dark. We were inseparable. We built pillow forts, explored the woods behind my house, and he'd sit by my bed until I fell asleep, promising to scare away any monsters hiding in the closet. He had this one strange quirk, though. He'd always whisper, "When you grow up, I'll still be here, waiting." I thought it was sweet, a promise that our friendship would last forever. But as I got older, made real friends, and discovered new hobbies, Pip just faded away. By the time I was a teenager, he was just a fuzzy, distant memory, a cute story to tell about a lonely kid. I hadn't thought about him in years, until last week it started subtly. Objects in my apartment would be slightly out of place. My keys, which I always leave in a bowl by the door, were on the kitchen counter. A book I was reading was on a different shelf. I brushed it off as stress. I just started a new demanding job, and my mind was all over the place. Then I started hearing things, faint whispers, just on the edge of my hearing, when I was home alone. It sounded like someone calling my name, but so softly I could never be sure. I checked the vents, the pipes, convinced myself it was just the old building settling. But the feeling of being watched started to creep in. A cold spot in the room, the hair on my arms standing up for no reason. It was unsettling, but I kept telling myself I was just tired and overworked. The real turning point was a few nights ago. I was woken up around 3 a.m. by a noise from the living room. It was a soft thud, like something falling off a shelf. My heart was pounding. I live alone on the 3rd floor. I grabbed the heavy flashlight I keep by my bed and slowly crept out of my room. The apartment was dark and silent. I scanned the living room with a beam of light. Everything seemed normal. Then the light landed on my old bookshelf, the one where I keep childhood memorabilia. Lying on the floor was a small, dusty, hand-carved wooden figure. It was a crude little man with button eyes and yarn for hair. My blood ran cold. I hadn't seen this thing in over 20 years. It was a gift I'd made for Pip for his birthday. I picked it up, my hand trembling. How did it fall? It was tucked away in a box on the top shelf. As I stood there, confused and terrified, I heard it again. A whisper, but clearer this time, right behind me. "Did you miss me?" I spun around, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. There was nothing there, just empty space. But the air was freezing, and the whisper echoed in my head. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, things escalated. I came home from work to find all the kitchen cabinets wide open. Not just ajar, but flung open. I spent the afternoon searching every inch of my apartment, checking the locks, convinced someone had broken in. But nothing was stolen. Nothing was out of place except for the cabinets. That night, I tried to rationalize it. A prank? A very specific, very strange burglar? My own mind playing tricks on me. I decided to set up a camera in my living room, just to prove to myself I was going crazy. I went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. And then the giggling started. It was a child's giggle, faint at first, coming from the living room. It was the same giggle I used to imagine for Pip. It grew louder, more mischievous, echoing through my small apartment. I was paralyzed with fear. I squeezed my eyes shut, pulling the covers over my head like I did when I was a kid. I kept telling myself, "He's not real. He's not real." The giggling stopped abruptly. A heavy silence fell over the apartment. After what felt like an eternity, I heard a slow, deliberate creak from the floorboards just outside my bedroom door. Creak. Pause. Creak. Someone was walking towards my room. The doorknob began to turn, slowly, agonizingly. I held my breath, my entire body rigid. The door swung open with a low groan. In the faint light from the street lamp outside my window, a silhouette stood in the doorway. It was small, the size of a child, but the proportions were all wrong. Too thin, with limbs that seemed just a little too long. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. I couldn't see a face, just a dark, vaguely human shape. Then it spoke, and the voice was no longer a whisper or a giggle. It was a low, raspy sound, like dry leaves scraping against pavement. It was a child's voice, but ancient and wrong. "You stopped playing with me," it said. The words were not an accusation, but a statement of fact, filled with a chilling sense of betrayal. "I told you I'd wait. I've been waiting for a long time." It took a step into the room. The others who forgot, they learned to play again. "It's my turn to play with you now." I finally found my voice and screamed. I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my phone and keys, and bolted out the fire escape. I didn't stop running until I was blocks away, standing under a streetlight, gasping for breath in the cold night air. I've been staying at a friend's place for the last 2 days. I haven't been back to my apartment. I couldn't bring myself to check the camera footage. What would I see? A ghost? A figment of my imagination? Or something worse? My friend thinks I had a nervous breakdown from stress, that I should see a doctor. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is all in my head. But last night, as I was trying to fall asleep on his couch, I heard it. A faint, familiar whisper from the other side of the room. "You can't run forever. It's time to play. I don't know what Pip is. I don't know what he wants. But he's not the friendly, comforting presence I remember from my childhood. He's something else. Something dark and patient. And he's not going to let me go." Thanks for listening. If you've ever had an imaginary friend, maybe check your closets. Make sure they're really gone. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. Stay safe out there. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, that ear-splitting, grating sound reserved for only the most dire of warnings. I fumbled for it, my heart already thumping against my ribs. The screen glowed with a stark white message against a black background. "Emergency alert system, civil danger warning. This is not a test." It went on, the usual stuff, but then the message got weird. It said, "Seek shelter immediately. Hide. Do not look outside. Do not make a sound." It repeated the last part. "Do not look outside." Well, that's the first thing I wanted to do. But a primal fear, the kind that lives deep in your gut, told me to listen. I scrambled out of bed, my mind racing. Hide where? My apartment wasn't exactly a fortress. I decided on the deep walk-in closet in my bedroom, the one with no windows. I slipped inside, pulling the heavy door almost completely shut, leaving just a sliver of a crack to see into my room. My breath hitched in my throat. I sat on the floor, surrounded by old coats and shoeboxes, my phone clutched in my hand like a lifeline. The screen went black, the alert gone as suddenly as it appeared. Now there was only silence. A heavy, unnatural silence that felt louder than any noise. The usual city hummed, the distant sirens, the rumble of late-night traffic was gone. It was like the world outside had just dot, dot, dot. My own breathing sounded like a hurricane in the stillness. Minutes stretched into an eternity. I tried my phone. No signal. No Wi-Fi. It was a brick. My isolation felt absolute. What was happening? An attack? A chemical spill? The alert was so vague, so terrifyingly simple. Hide. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic tapping. It wasn't coming from my door or my window. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere at once. Tap, tap, tap. It was a gentle sound, almost musical, like a single drop of water hitting a metal sheet. But it was in perfect, unnerving rhythm. I pressed my ear against the closet door, straining to hear. The tapping grew slightly louder, closer. It wasn't random. It was methodical. It was searching. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a natural disaster. This was something else. I shuffled back deeper into the closet, trying to melt into the shadows and the scent of mothballs. The tapping continued its patient, relentless beat. Suddenly a new sound joined the chorus. A voice. It was high and sweet, like a child's, but it had a strange melodic echo to it, like it was being sung through a long pipe. It floated through my apartment, seeming to come from right outside my bedroom window. Come out, wherever you are," it sang. It was a nursery rhyme, a children's game. But the voice was wrong. It was too perfect, too clear, and utterly devoid of any human warmth. It was a recording, a lure. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I bit down on my knuckle to keep from crying out. The voice started a new song. Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of POSIE, double quote. The gentle tapping kept its steady rhythm underneath the singing. Tap, tap. The singing stopped abruptly. Silence descended again, but this time it felt more threatening, like a predator holding its breath. And then a scratching sound. It was at my bedroom window. A slow, deliberate scrape of something sharp against the glass. Scra-ape. Pause. Scra-ape. I squeezed my eyes shut, picturing whatever was out there, its long claws dragging down the pane. The alert's words screamed in my head. Do not look outside. I understood why now. They didn't want us to see it. Seeing it would mean something worse than just fear. The scratching stopped, and a soft thud echoed, as if something had landed on the fire escape. Then I heard the window lock click. My heart stopped. It didn't break the glass. It unlocked it. How, my mind couldn't process it. I heard the faint squeal of the window sliding open. Cold night air rushed into my room, carrying a smell with it something like wet soil and burnt sugar. It was cloying and disgusting. I stayed perfectly still, trying not to breathe. I heard a soft, wet shuffling sound as something impossibly heavy and large squeezed its way through the window frame and dropped onto my bedroom floor. The floorboards groaned under its weight. It was inside. It was in the room with me. The rhythmic tapping started again, but it was different now. It was louder, closer. It was the sound of a long, bony finger tapping against the walls of my bedroom. Tap, tap. On the wall by the window. Tap, tap. On my dresser. It was moving around the room, methodically checking every surface, every piece of furniture. It was looking for me. The sweet, childlike voice returned, but this time it was a whisper, right in the room. "I know you're in here," it cooed, the sound seeming to slither through the air. "I can smell your fear. It's delicious. I clapped my hand over my mouth, stifling a sob. Tears streamed down my face. This couldn't be real. The tapping stopped directly outside the closet door. Silence. I could feel it standing there, just inches away from me, separated only by a thin piece of wood. I held my breath until my lungs burned. I could hear its breathing now, a low, wet, gurgling sound, like someone drowning slowly. The doorknob began to jiggle, first gently, then with more force. It wasn't trying to be quiet anymore. It knew. The door shuddered as it slammed its weight against it. The wood splintered, once, twice. On the third slam, the lock gave way, and the door flew open, crashing against the wall of the closet. Standing in the doorway was a figure that defied all logic. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs bent at angles that were all wrong. It had no face, just a smooth expanse of pale skin where its features should have been. A single, long, bony finger, the source of the tapping, was extended towards me. The child's voice came from its throat, a horrifying ventriloquist act. "Found you." It took a step into the closet, its wet, shuffling feet sticking to the floorboards. I was trapped. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide. I screamed, a raw, ragged sound of pure terror. As it reached for me, its faceless head tilting with a sickening crack, my phone lit up in my hand. A new alert. Emergency alert system. All clear. It is now safe to emerge. I stared at the message, then back at the creature. It froze, its hand hovering inches from my face. The singing voice spoke one last time, no longer a sweet whisper, but a distorted, enraged shriek that rattled my bones. Until next time. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it dissolved. Not into smoke or light, but it just folded in on itself, collapsing into a point of nothingness. The smell of wet earth and burnt sugar vanished. The silence returned, but this time it was just the normal quiet of the night. I'm still in my closet. The all-clear message is glowing on my phone. But I know it's a lie. It's not all clear, and I don't think it ever will be again. I'm afraid to leave this closet. I'm afraid of the next time my phone buzzes, because I know it's still out there, tapping and singing and waiting.
The late afternoon sun was casting long, eerie shadows across the empty classroom. I was the only one left, trying to finish up a project that was due tomorrow. Mr. Harrison, my history teacher, had already left, telling me to lock up when I was done. The silence of the school after hours was usually peaceful, but today, it felt different. It was heavy, almost suffocating. The usual hum of the fluorescent light seemed louder, more insistent. I was hunched over my desk, gluing tiny pieces of cardboard onto a model of a medieval castle, when I first heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound from the hallway, tap tap. It was slow, deliberate. I paused, my glue stick hovering in midair. It's probably just the janitor, I thought, trying to reassure myself. Old Mr. Henderson and his squeaky cart, but the sound wasn't squeaky. It was a clean, sharp tap, like shoes on the polished linoleum floor. I tried to ignore it and go back to my project, but the sound grew closer. Tap, tap, tap. It was just outside the classroom door now. My heart started to pound in my chest like a drum. I held my breath, listening. The tapping stopped. Silence, a long, drawn-out silence that was somehow worse than the noise. I stared at the door, at the small, rectangular window set into it. I expected to see a face, a shadow, something, but there was nothing. Slowly, I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor with a sound that felt deafening in the quiet room. I tiptoed to the door, my palm sweating. I couldn't explain the feeling of dread that was creeping over me, cold and prickly. It was just a sound, right, but something in my gut was screaming at me that this was wrong. I peered through the small window. The hallway was empty. The lights flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow on the rows of lockers that lined the walls. There was no sign of anyone, no Mr. Henderson, no cart, nothing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Maybe I was just tired. My mind was probably playing tricks on me after staring at this stupid castle for 3 hours. I turned back to my desk, feeling a little foolish, but as I took a step, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't in the hallway, it was inside the classroom. Tap, it was coming from the back of the room, near the supply closet. I froze, my blood turning to ice. I slowly turned my head, my eyes scanning the rows of empty desks. There was nothing there. Just chairs tucked in, and forgotten textbooks. Tap, it was louder this time, sharper. My eyes darted to the supply closet. The door was slightly ajar. I was sure Mr. Harrison had closed it before he left. I always notice things like that. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I wanted to run, to grab my bag and bolt out of there, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling and sounding pathetically small in the large room. "Is anyone there, Mr. Henderson?" The only answer was the buzzing of the lights. Then, a new sound, a soft, scraping noise. It was coming from the closet. Like fingernails dragging across wood, that was it. I wasn't sticking around to find out what was making that noise. Adrenaline surged through me. I lunged for my backpack, shoving my project into it without a care for the delicate cardboard towers. I had to get out, now. As my fingers fumbled with the zipper, the scraping stopped. The silence returned, more menacing than before. Then, the closet door began to creak open, slowly, agonizingly slowly. A dark sliver of blackness widened inch by inch. I couldn't see anything inside, just pure, impenetrable darkness. But I could feel it. I could feel something watching me from that darkness. I didn't wait to see what would emerge. I slung my backpack over my shoulder and sprinted for the door. My hand closed around the cold metal handle, and I yanked it open. I burst into the empty hallway, not daring to look back. I just ran. My footsteps echoed loudly, joining the ghostly tapping that I could still hear in my head. I didn't stop running until I was out of the school building and gasping for air in the cool evening. The sun had almost set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. It looked so normal, so peaceful. But I knew what I had heard. The school wasn't empty. The next day, I handed in my slightly crushed castle project. Mr. Harrison asked me if I had remembered to lock the classroom door. I just nodded, unable to speak. I asked him about the janitor, Mr. Henderson. He looked at me, confused. "Mr. Henderson," he said. "He retired last year. We have a new cleaning crew now, but they don't start until 10 at night. I never stayed after class again. Sometimes, when I walk down that hallway, I can almost hear it. A faint, rhythmic tapping, and I walk a little faster. To this day, I have no idea what was in that classroom with me. Some say every old school has its ghosts, its stories. I think I might have stumbled into one of mine. I don't know what it wanted, or what would have happened if I'd stayed. And honestly, I don't ever want to find out. Thanks for listening to my story. If you have any creepy school experiences of your own, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there.
It was my 3rd week as a junior doctor, doing the night shift on the notoriously understaffed Ward 7. The fluorescent lights hummed a dreary tune, casting long, dancing shadows that played tricks on my sleep-deprived eyes. I was checking patient charts at the central nursing station when the call button for room 713 buzzed. It was a single, abrupt sound that cut through the quiet hum of the ward. I glanced at the board. Room 713. Mr. Harrison. He'd been admitted with severe pneumonia. An old man with lungs that sounded like rustling paper. I walked down the hallway, my rubber-soled shoes squeaking softly on the linoleum. When I pushed open the door to 713, a wave of cold air hit me. The room was freezing, far colder than the rest of the ward. Mr. Harrison was lying in his bed, his eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. His skin was pale, with a bluish tint around his lips. I didn't need to check his pulse to know he was gone. I noted the time of death, did the necessary paperwork, and called the morgue attendants. It was a sad, but unfortunately not an uncommon part of the job. About an hour later, after the attendants had come and gone, and the room had been cleaned, I was back at the nurse's station trying to catch up on paperwork. That's when it happened again. The call button for room 713 buzzed. I froze, pen hovering over the chart. It was probably a glitch. The wiring in this old hospital was a mess. I ignored it. A minute later it buzzed again, longer this time, more insistent. My heart started to beat a little faster. I walked back down the hall, my footsteps feeling heavier this time. The door to 713 was closed. I took a deep breath and pushed it open. The room was empty, sterile, and still unnaturally cold. The bed was neatly made with fresh linens. The call button remote was sitting perfectly on the bedside table, untouched. I picked it up, examined it. It seemed fine. I chalked it up to a faulty electrical signal and went back to my desk, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, but it didn't stop. Every hour, like clockwork, the light for 713 would flash and the buzzer would sound. Each time I'd walk down, open the door to an empty freezing room, and find nothing out of place. The senior nurse on duty, a woman named Carol, who had seen everything, just shrugged when I told her. Faulty wiring, she said, not looking up from her crossword puzzle. Happens all the time. Just ignore it. I tried. I really did. I put a piece of tape over the light on the main board so I wouldn't see it flash. But I couldn't ignore the sound. That sharp, demanding buzz that seemed to echo louder and louder each time it went off. By 3 a.m., my nerves were completely shot. Every little sound made me jump. The hum of the ice machine, the distant clang of an elevator, the rustle of my own scrubs. The next time the buzzer for 713 went off, I decided I'd had enough. I wasn't going to just check the room. I was going to unplug the entire bed unit from the wall. I marched down the corridor with a sense of purpose, determined to end this ridiculous haunting, or whatever it was. I swung the door to 713 open and stopped dead. The room wasn't empty anymore. Someone was in the bed. An old man lying on his side, facing away from me. The sheets were pulled up to his neck. My breath caught in my throat. Had they moved a new patient in without telling me? No, that was impossible. I would have the chart. My hand trembled as I reached for the light switch. I flipped it on, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent light. The figure in the bed didn't move. Slowly, cautiously, I approached the bedside. "Sir?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Sir, are you all right?" I reached out a hesitant hand to touch his shoulder. As my fingers made contact, the man's body rolled over with an unnerving, fluid motion. It was Mr. Harrison. His eyes were still wide open, but now they were fixed on me. His skin was the color of ash, and his lips were pulled back in a silent grimace. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the call button remote. It was clutched tightly in his cold, stiff hand, his thumb pressed firmly down on the button. The buzzing sound filled the room, loud and incessant, drilling into my skull. I stumbled backward, my mind screaming. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. He was dead. I saw him. I signed the papers. The morgue took him away. I slammed my back against the wall, my eyes locked on the figure in the bed. He just lay there, staring, his thumb unmoving on the button. The buzzing was the only sound in the world. Then he began to speak. His voice was a dry, rattling whisper, like dead leaves skittering across pavement. "Cold," he rasped. "So cold. Why is it so cold in here, doctor?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. I just stood there, paralyzed by a fear so absolute it felt like ice water flooding my veins. His head tilted slightly, a small cracking sound echoing in the silent room. "You're the doctor," he whispered again, his voice gaining a slight, mocking edge. "Can't you do something about the cold?" My training, my logic, my understanding of the world, it all shattered in that moment. I was looking at a dead man, a man I had pronounced dead hours ago, and he was talking to me. The call button buzzed and buzzed and buzzed. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been seconds or an eternity. Finally, some primal instinct for survival kicked in. I turned and ran. I didn't just walk quickly. I sprinted out of that room, down the hallway, past the nurse's station where Carol was now fast asleep, her head on her desk. I didn't stop until I burst through the main doors of the hospital and was standing in the pre-dawn chill of the parking lot, gasping for air. I never went back. I called in, quit my job, and never set foot in that hospital again. I tried to tell people what I saw, but they just gave me looks of pity. They said I was overworked, sleep-deprived, that I'd had a psychotic break. Maybe they were right. Maybe it was all a hallucination brought on by stress and exhaustion. But even now, years later, whenever I'm alone in the quiet of the night, I can sometimes hear it. A faint, distant buzzing sound. And when I close my eyes, I can see him, Mr. Harrison, lying in that cold, sterile room, his dead eyes staring into mine, his thumb pressed down on the call button, forever asking me why it's so cold. Some nights the memory is so vivid, I find myself reaching for a blanket, an irrational urge to try and finally make him warm. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Stay safe out there.